So, so David, could you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what organization you're representing?
My name is David Tierney. I'm the head of school at Cambridge Friends School, the only Quaker school and an elementary school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just outside of Harvard. This is my third year here, and of course, this is my third year as a head of school, and has been a daunting challenge this year.
Can imagine. Yeah, definitely a different kind of year, to say the least. And so you and your school have decided to implement upper room germicidal UV technology for air sanitization. And so we were wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about how you heard about UR-GUV.
Sure. Back in June, the prior school year was coming to a close, we began looking at how we'd be able to possibly reopen this past September. And we were exploring things that were referred to us specifically about HVAC systems, administrative controls, cleaning, all that kind of material. And one of our parents happens to be Salman Khashoggi, who knew what we were doing and introduced us to the idea of GUV lighting. And my initial reaction was, are you out of your mind? UV lighting is bad. We're not doing that. No, thank you. But Salman was quite persistent and quite informative. And over the course of about 4 or 5 weeks, as he educated me and some of my staff about what we were doing and what we were looking at, it became more and more clear that this was obviously an absolutely superlative layer of safety that added to everything else we've put in place and we're about to put in place would make this school super safe. But what really set me over the top, to be honest with you, was the notion that this was not just a short-term investment for this current pandemic. And regardless of how you feel about whether there are going to be imminent pandemics in the future, the fact that it's also an air treatment system that affects cold and flu viruses, and schools suffer mightily from those passing through the student body, it seemed like a great long-term investment in the overall health of the school too.
That's so great, yeah. And so I'm assuming you probably had a summer full of meetings to discuss the installation and things like that. So, and you also mentioned that Salman was very persistent. So was it kind of his suggestions that convinced you that upper room germicidal UV technology was best for your school?
Not just him, his whole team, including Ed Nardell, who's also over at Harvard, and then Bill Parnell, who is the procurer of his company Aeromed makes the product that we bought. Ed came over and walked through the school and looked at the spaces and further identified that UV lighting would be very effective here. We had some challenging spaces too, but most of the rooms, it was a fairly straightforward installation. As we got into some of the science of this, and Ed was particularly helpful, we just became more and more convinced to the point where we couldn't wait to get it in.
Right.
So we actually started the school year without it in place and did the installation in early October.
Oh, cool. And so, yeah, I guess along those lines, how long did the installation process take from start to finish?
Nowhere near as long as was originally led to believe, because Bill at Aeromed had come in and we were the first place he'd done this installation. He had a new installation device in the prior setup. The engineer would sort of measure the room and figure out where lights had to go. But then they go through this intricate commissioning process of walking through the room with a light meter and figuring out where lights needed to move. And it was extraordinarily tedious, when I can understand. What Ed has designed is a device that goes up against the wall. The light mounts on the device and you move it around the room so that you figure out where it needs to go before you start drilling holes. And they did 26 rooms. We commissioned 26 rooms in less than a week.
That's incredible. That's so fast.
It was awesome. And that included, now again, most of the rooms are fairly straightforward, but we've got a couple of really funky spaces that they probably spent a disproportionate amount of time in. Rooms with multiple ceiling heights and alleys and ceiling. They were a nightmare, and I'm sure Ed wishes he never saw them. But the rest of the rooms were a breeze, and in some cases they were done with 4 or 5 or 6 rooms in a day with this device. It was amazing.
Right. Yeah. And I had actually heard about the kind of unique architecture of your school. So
Oh yeah, we're fans.
it's good that you guys are able to overcome
Yeah.
those small challenges. And so if you feel okay with sharing, can I ask you how much it costs the school?
Well, I haven't gotten the bills yet, but I know what here we are a month after it's done and no one is asking to be paid.
Sure, yeah.
The light instruments themselves, and as I said, there were 26 rooms, on average 2 per room, although some of our bigger spaces had more. Although, one last note, the gym only has 2 devices in it. They put in much bigger devices that cover
Okay.
space. So the estimate there was around for 26 rooms in the low to mid $50,000 range.
Okay.
And then I'm waiting. The second cost, the other big cost, is the electrician's cost for running conduit to power all of these lights.
Yeah.
They don't draw much electricity, but we wanted them all on separate circuits. And again, the estimate I got from that was around $40,000. So we're probably looking somewhere between $95,000 when all is said and done.
Yeah, and so just as a side question, you mentioned that you decided to start the school year in September without the lights, and then you implemented them in October, you said? Was it kind of like a big sigh of relief once they were finally installed and ready to go, or?
Yeah, it was. Although, to be honest, a lot of my faculty had some of the same reaction to UV lighting that I had. And of course, everybody goes online and reads and gets partial information. And UV lighting is bad. UV lighting is this and that. So Salman and Ed actually came onto a Zoom meeting with the faculty before we did this and walked through what it was. And I think did a lot to allay the fears and misunderstandings people had about UV lighting. And yes, for the most part, there was a big sigh of relief amongst families, students, and faculty. There are still a few people who are dubious about just how well is this going to work. And of course, the only way we can prove it is no one gets sick over the next school year. We say,
Yeah.
But in the meantime, people are very happy with it, and you wouldn't even know they're in the room. When the lights are on and you're in there during the day, and your regular classroom lights are on, people don't even notice the instrument themselves. The only time you even see the light is at night, because we keep them on 24/7, because it adds an added layer of sort of disinfecting overnight. So yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome. And so yeah, has anyone affiliated with the school expressed? I mean, you had mentioned at the beginning they were maybe a little bit skeptical, but once they've been implemented, has the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive for the most part, would you say?
Almost exclusively, with the exception of my librarian, who had plants in the room, and she had all of her plants up on the top of the bookshelves. So they're almost in the UV lighting, and this lighting is not good for plants. So you have to keep your plants down on table level or the floor. So we had a little tragedy in the library, but I think we've got that worked out.
Yeah, I actually heard about the plants too. So
of course.
Yeah, and so have you had any cases of COVID-19 in the school?
No.
If you feel comfortable sharing. No?
Absolutely not one.
That's great. That's so amazing.
It's a month or so in, with the UV lighting, and 2 months in with our overall protection plan. And knock on wood, we're on the right track.
Doing well so far, yeah. And so along with that, the protection plan you guys have in place, like, do you have any other layers besides the UV lighting? So are you encouraging people to wear masks, hand washing, social distance?
Yeah, we've got what they call the administrative controls. So we're fortunate that most of our classrooms have exterior doors. So kids come and go out of their individual classrooms in their own doorway. So they're not mixing in the halls.
Oh, wow.
We limit access to the halls, your kids to use the bathrooms and to go to their cubbies or their locker areas on small numbers. So there's never more than 2 kids at a time out there. We do have masks required all day. We have optional goggles or face shields for those who want those as well. Lunch up till now and snacks have always been outdoors, but we've got enough space that we can spread kids out pretty far, so that when they're forced to be indoors to eat, there's great social distancing. We've managed to have social distancing of 6 feet between every single desk in classrooms. And for large classes, we've given them second rooms for breakout spaces. We disinfect classrooms every single morning as part of the cleaning process. I'm sure and we had our HVAC system overhauled. So for this fall, 100% fresh air has been pumped into the rooms. And what we're working on now is how we're going to adjust that in the winter so we don't freeze up our heating system. So we're looking at adding filter levels, perhaps even putting some more fans in the room to accelerate the airflow through the UV lighting. So yeah, if there's a safer place on this planet right now, I don't know where it is.
Wow. And so the hope is that you guys would serve as like a model for other schools to kind of adapt these same sorts of protection plans.
I hope so. I've had several phone calls from heads of schools at other independent schools. I would hope that the public schools would take a look at this too. I can understand for a big public school system like Cambridge that this kind of a treatment has a hefty price tag for
Yeah.
a school system that might have 1,000 rooms. But independent schools in particular and small schools should really look carefully at this, not only for the short-term benefit of dealing with this pandemic, but as I mentioned earlier, the long-term health benefits of the air quality in schools, which are notorious for having poor air quality to begin with.
Well, David, I think that's all the questions that I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add or say before we sign off?
No, I think we've got it all covered. This is great. Best of luck
Awesome.
to you in this.
What was that?
Best of luck to you as you move forward with these projects.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
So, thanks so much.